Hello, and welcome to the United Federation of Reddit podcast. I'm your host, Big J76.
Hi, and I'm Smash.
On this podcast, we'll be discussing news and events centered around Reddit communities who are members of the United Federation of Reddit. The format of this particular podcast will be less about Star Trek news in the mainstream, as there are already podcasts filling that need, but instead, the focus will be on the Reddit Star Trek community. You can find links to these subreddits on the sidebar of r/United Federation. That's reddit.com/r/United Federation. I believe it goes without saying that memes are one of the pillars of the Reddit community. And today we have a special guest with us, one of the moderators from r/StarTrekMemes. His name is Flelk. Now, Flelk, I want to welcome you to our podcast today.
Hey, thanks. It's good to be here.
Flelk, I got to tell you, I love memes. I love memes. I'm sure you do as well. Tell me some more about Star Trek memes.
So Star Trek memes is really one of my favorite subreddits. It is so off the wall. When I first joined Star Trek memes, just as a regular user before they invited me to be a mod, Star Trek was kind of dead. I don't think even the reboot movies were on the horizon at that point. So, the memes that people were working with, it was the Star Trek that we had. We weren't expecting any more. And so whatever crazy, weird ass idea that somebody could come up with to smash together and try and make a meme about Star Trek with, that was what we ended up with in the sub. We've got new stuff coming out now, so it's sort of breathing some more life into the Star Trek memes subreddit. Memes as humor form are kind of weird in and of themselves. And so to see people mash that up with these really obscure pieces of Star Trek lore is something that I've always really enjoyed.
There was a point that our last guest made, Zadok Payed. He's one of the mods in Treknobabble. And one of the things that he mentioned that I thought was really said a lot was that the problem with Star Trek on Reddit is that Star Trek is not popular on Reddit.
I think that's true to a certain extent. I don't know, on Reddit, as in so many other forums, I think the Star Trek fans kind of huddle off to the side and just sort of do our own thing. It doesn't really have the giant mass appeal that something like Star Wars has generated. Star Trek tends to be a pretty cerebral show. Of course, there's the long-running trope of the technobabble, which I think a lot of Star Trek fans are interested in. And I don't think that necessarily appeals to tremendously broad audiences. So I don't necessarily think it's that Star Trek is unpopular on Reddit. I think that, we just kind of huddle up off to the side and do our own thing.
Well, and then the other thing that I think you have noticed, and that a lot of the subscribers have noticed, is that generally when it comes to Star Trek and memes and Star Trek memes on Reddit, is that the mainstream memes, there are maybe there's one meme, possibly two from Star Trek related content that's even seen in the mainstream, that is annoyed Picard. Mm-hmm. And after that, it's kind of doesn't really go anywhere after that one.
I think that's probably fair. Yeah, I think annoyed Picard is probably the one big one that has really, caught on and sees a lot of use. And other than that, I'm thinking about it, and I'm sure that there are listeners to the podcast who are, rattling off like 17 other Star Trek related memes that have seen mainstream breakthrough. But just off the top of my head, while we're recording this, I can't really think of another big one. I really can't. And, sometimes you do see some things sort of break through. Like this is going to date the podcast, but just within the last few days, at the top of Reddit, somebody posted the scene where Data is in command of the Enterprise, and Worf is expressing some frustration with Data, like on the bridge in front of the other crew. And Data asked to see him in the ready room, and Data is like, I can't recall Commander Riker ever expressing that kind of irritation with Captain Picard. I need you to support me in front of the other crew members. And, basically gives Worf this delightful, emotionless Data dressing down. And, Worf kind of realizes like, oh crap, I done wrong, and apologizes for it. And they both say they want to stay friends. And, it's a great scene. And that hit the top of Reddit. That was on the front page. So, there is some breakthrough appeal every now and then, but in terms of meme templates, we're over here in Star Trek memes just doing whatever weird crap we can come up with. We really are.
Smash, you got to tell us, what is your favorite Star Trek meme? Do you have a favorite?
Of all time or just of this week? Because that's really hard. I would say this holiday season, you guys have seen the Wreath of Khan.
Oh, yes. I did see that one. That one.
It's actually a perennial favorite. That one comes back every year. It's always delightful. I will always upvote it every December. Happy holidays. Here's the Wreath of Khan.
It's so clever. Like who even came up with that to begin with?
There are very clever minds out there coming up with these memes. And there's another one. There is one, if there's any meme that we are really trying to make a breakthrough with, it is a variation of the distracted boyfriend meme. There was a Star Trek Voyager version of that meme that popped up. And if you guys haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking out Star Trek Memes. It's got to be there. I'm sure it was used fresh. I've used it as well. It's a great scene from, I don't recall which episode of Star Trek Voyager, but this was the thing that I really liked about that was a user was watching the show, and it was one of those, I paused it at just the right moment kind of things. And this image really almost seemed like a great sort of variation of a mainstream meme. And it was one of those templates that you could really take and run with it. And I tried it as well and had a little bit of success with it.
Yeah, I think I recall the scene that you're talking about. The doctor has his hands in like some sort of sanitizing thing or something, and he's got this he's got this rapturous expression on his face, and then Cass is standing next to him, staring at him, just looking disgusted.
Yes.
Yeah. And so many opportunities to label stuff in there. So many opportunities. And you're right. It is absolutely the distracted boyfriend meme, just in Star Trek form. And that's one of the other things that I really enjoy about Star Trek memes is people just spot stuff. They pause it to get up and, go to the restroom or grab a drink or whatever. And they come back and they see something that is absolutely goofy as hell on the screen. And they'll add some text to it and they'll slap it up on Reddit, and our dumbasses will upvote it and everybody has a good goofy time. I was watching an episode of Voyager. It was a while back at this point, more than a year ago. But I happened to catch one of the Kazon with this weird, doofy look on his face. And I looked at that and I was like, that is the guy from Ancient Aliens making the weird face. And so I just grabbed a screen cap, threw it up in Star Trek memes with the caption humans. And it got upvotes. It was a dumb, stupid joke, and it got upvotes.
I liked it. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm just thinking, how did you make it look like? I mean, that looks flawless to me. Did you make that?
He's got his hands in the right position and everything. And no, there's no processing on that other than just adding the caption at the bottom of it. Like I said, I can't remember if I paused it to go throw some dinner together and then come back or what it was, but I came back and I sat down and I was like, that is perfect. That is exactly what I need it to be. And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that is amazing that you were able to find that moment like that. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'd been looking for it, there's no way I would have found it. And that's what I was going to say is so much of the content in Star Trek memes just comes from people who love the show, going back to the show and seeing in it an opportunity to make a meme while they're watching it. And that's one of the things that I love about Reddit, just kind of in general, is there's always people who are going back and revisiting these classics, or there are people who are encountering them for the very first time and want to talk about a fresh experience for a show that's been off the air for 20 years. I still see people in like the Babylon 5 subreddit saying like, oh my gosh, I'm watching Babylon 5 for the first time. What the hell are these scary spider looking dudes? And we're like, oh, they're called shadows. You'll learn way more about them as the show goes on.
And it's great that it's great that people come back to these shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's one of the things that I love about Reddit is it's a constant cycle. Somebody is always somewhere in a rewatch, or someone has rewatched that episode recently. And if there's something that occurs to you that you want to talk about, there are people who are there. There are people who are there and people who are interested.
Now, Smash just posted a meme for us to review. So you must like this one.
I do.
Let me see here.
We were just talking about how people take their version of memes and apply it to Star Trek. And this is kind of a good example. It's the one, what's the original? It's the guy sitting behind a booth and it just says, change my mind.
Yes.
The change my mind meme. And so this one says DS9 is just cheers in space. And it's just Picard, sitting there drinking his tea. And it's just hilarious. Just a great example of just people applying Star Trek to, the viral memes and just making it our own. It's great.
And I applaud you for describing it and realizing that our listeners are going to be thinking that why we can't see what they're seeing. What are they talking about? So for our listeners, for memes, the original is a guy in a park, blue shirt, black hair, kind of looks like Phil Dunphy from Modern Family. It's a change my mind meme. Well, we inserted Picard drinking his Earl Grey tea, and that is one of the things that we do with the Star Trek memes that I really enjoy seeing is we're taking these established meme templates and applying it to Star Trek, because I've got to tell you, and we sort of talked about that difficulty of getting in the mainstream. So we have that template that is from that episode of Voyager we just spoke about a little bit ago. I saw that and I'm thinking, this has so much potential. There are so many things that you can do with this. The setup looks to be a familiar format. I'm going to caption this, and I uploaded that to a subreddit called Meme Economy. Don't know if you guys have heard of that one, but it's kind of a subreddit where you post a meme, sort of like a Wall Street, invest in this meme sort of thing. You get what's called meme coins. If it does really well, people get upvoted like anything else. So I took this, felt really good about it. Good caption. I'm going to put this on Meme Economy. This thing's going to explode. They downvoted me into bankruptcy.
Oh, no.
Bankruptcy. I cannot post there until I start finding, these other memes and do like an invest command and try to get a return on investment and everything else. I just say, you know what? Forget about that. I mean, how good is it to feel on Reddit to know that you can downvote someone into being too broke to post anymore?
See, this is why I've never tried my hand at Meme Economy. I love memes and I love Reddit, but I have no faith in my ability to identify like what the next big trend is going to be or anything like that. I love the idea of that subreddit, but I don't know. I like my memes in the wild, not in market format.
Right. Now, I think the thing that was frustrating about that is just the fact that when it comes to Star Trek, you try to get something out there to break into the mainstream, and you test the waters there, and it's almost like, okay, wow, I'll run back to where I get my my Star Trek fix. And that's the thing that I believe is a very telling and very interesting about the community is there's a lot of Star Trek out there. There are a lot of fans, but it seems to be sort of a self-contained silo amongst the Reddit community.
I think that's fair. I think that is becoming less true. I think there are a lot of people paying more attention to, Trek No Babble and Star Trek memes, obviously, and Risa. And I've seen a pretty big uptick in activity on the TNG subreddit over the last several months. Used to be a hugely upvoted comment in TNG was like 8 or 9 upvotes. And, now I'm seeing stuff come through with over 100, which is always delightful. And I think with the Picard show that we are slated to get next year, that is going to be something that drives up interest in TNG. And, as Discovery moves into its second season, I think that's pulling in, people who are interested in being able to talk about Star Trek again. Whatever your thoughts on Discovery or the new Picard show might be, the fact of the matter is, we now live in a world where there's new Star Trek again. And I think that is definitely going to bring people to Reddit to talk about it. Reddit just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I think we're going to see an influx there. And, the main Star Trek subreddit is they're understandably careful about what they do and don't want to see in that subreddit.
Right.
And so, there's some of these more freewheeling communities, like I think Treknobabble is an excellent example. Treknobabble just doesn't care. Just put up whatever, like, hey, this clog in my drain kind of looks like Data, and like, fine, put it up, we'll upvote it. Whatever little thing you encountered in the world that made you think of Star Trek, let's talk about it.
And that's great that they do that, because when it comes to memes or just any kind of Star Trek post, really, Star Trek Memes is the place to go to on Reddit if you're looking for memes that are Star Trek related. And a great companion to that is Treknobabble.
Yeah, absolutely. The person who founded Treknobabble, Dead Fraggle, like, his stance was always like, we have no standards at all. If it's kind of related to Star Trek, like, put it up. So, and with Star Trek memes, again, it's a lot of doofy jokes. It's a lot of, I happen to pause this at the right time. And Smash, I'm glad you brought up the fact that, people take these broader meme templates that have sort of made their way throughout Reddit and throughout the internet as a whole, and then apply them to Star Trek things. That happens as well. I'm looking at the sub right now. There is one of these where somebody saw a billboard that was memeable. They found, or not a billboard, but like a signboard for a school where somebody had put up resistance is futile, you will be educated. Which is delightful, absolutely delightful. So yeah, not just a meme in the wild, but a meme in reality. I'm looking at one here where they've done the classic people sitting around a conference table, right? And the boss says something and people make suggestions, and then one person makes a suggestion and he gets thrown out of the window, right? And this is one, it's the Voyager conference table, the Janeway at the head of the table saying, how can we get home as fast as possible? And somebody suggests, or Chakotay suggests, let's contact our spirit animals. And Tom Paris suggests we could turn ourselves into lizards. And, then somebody else suggests maybe stop going on dangerous side quests and just fly home. And Janeway throws him out the window of the front of the ship. She spaces him for that comment.
Enough with the side quest. Well, that is absolutely true.
Oh yeah, a classic complaint about Voyager. I saw someone postulate in Daystrom Institute the other day, which, by the way, Daystrom Institute has got to be one of my very favorite subreddits. That level of attention to detail and fan canon, and just those people are insane, and I love every last one of them. But I saw someone on Daystrom Institute postulate that the Voyager crew just flew in circles for a while, gathering supplies before they actually started on their way home. And sort of cite some stuff from the show, like, why were they in Kazon space for so long? They can't have been going in a straight line. So yeah, classic complaint about Voyager. Somebody saw a memeing opportunity for it, and they put it together and posted it, and that is actually, it's the 21st highest voted post of all time in the subreddit.
Yeah, rightfully so. It's nice. Like, you have these frustrations about something that you love, and then you can turn around and make it something funny and artistic. It's great.
Memes is how we communicate with the world, is how we take out our frustrations day to day. I mean, Smash, if you're ever in a bad mood, the best way to express it is to use a meme.
I do. I'm self-fulfilling with my memes whenever I make them myself. It's, you have something in mind you want to create, and a lot of times you just pull from stuff that you already like Star Trek, for example, and that's where you come up with.
Now, do you use memes for actual real life events and thoughts, or are these, hey, this looks like a good template, I'm going to make up something?
It kind of works both ways. I will be, watching an episode of Star Trek, and I'll encounter a situation where I'm like, hey, that could be turned into a Drake meme, right? With the hand up, and then the second panel with him smiling, right? Like, I hate this thing, I approve of that thing. Not too long after Discovery came out, I saw one where somebody made a Drake meme with the Discovery crew at the top with him, frowning and putting his hand up. And then I think it was either the original series or TNG, or maybe it was a picture of Picard or something like that on the bottom. Like, yes, I approve of this. I've seen that. I've seen the classic. Oh Lord, I'm going to betray my ignorance of reality TV. But I think it's Pawn Stars, or something like that. There's a very popular meme with two guys yelling at one another, and like one of them eventually throws a chair. Is it Pawn Stars?
I don't know, but it's like an angry dad. I think he's a dad.
Yeah, that's the one. I don't feel too bad about betraying my ignorance of reality TV, but at any rate, somebody took one of those, and the first panel is it's a suicide machine, and the second panel is it merely converts your matter to energy and back. And the first guy says it copies you atom by atom and then destroys the original. Right. And this is a classic transporter argument, right? Are you murdering yourself and then creating a copy somewhere else? Or are you actually being turned into energy and transmitted? And what does that say about continuity of self? And these are like some deep philosophical questions. This is stuff that comes up in, college philosophy classes. And somebody saw an opportunity to turn it into a meme. There's that, somebody will see a meme and they'll see an opportunity to make a statement about Star Trek. And then there are also times when people will just, like I said, they'll see that moment in Star Trek and they're like, oh, this can be a meme. This can absolutely be a meme.
I know that's really not from Pawn Stars, but I cannot for the life of me think of what that's from. I'm sure our listeners are probably screaming what show that's from.
I'm gonna look it up. It's bothering me enough that I'm gonna look it up.
It's bothering me too, but I'm trying to think. Okay, well, so what search string on Google did reality show memes, screaming memes, guy throwing chair meme,
Google angry dad meme.
Angry dad throwing chair. But that's how we find these things. And believe it, it's American Chopper. That's it. It was American Chopper. I knew as soon as I saw it, I would know, because I've seen parts of the show. And I knew it was, wait a minute, no, something about motorcycles, because those guys aren't Pawn Stars. Okay, so yeah, American Chopper. But you're right. You're right. All it is, it's finding that one scene or that one moment, even in Star Trek. And there should be there's 700 hours. Is that right? About 700 hours of Star Trek content.
Oh, that sounds like that is ballpark to me. Yeah, I've never even bothered to run the calculation, but. That sounds ballpark to me.
Now, what would you guys, if I'm going to ask this of both of you, and each of you can tell me, in your opinion, what is it that takes a show, a franchise like this with hundreds of hours of content, and makes the meme economy so small?
That is a good question, and it's a complicated question. So I see a couple of factors at play here. Number one is, like I said, for a while, Star Trek was dead. We had all the Star Trek we thought we were ever going to get. The last episode of Enterprise aired, and there There were no plans for more TV shows. The reboot movies, I don't even think they were a twinkle in anybody's eye yet. Like, and so there was nothing there. And so by the time internet memes sort of came to prominence, and became widespread and became a form of humor, Star Trek was something that had already been done. It was over. It was finished, and there wasn't anybody who was watching Star Trek at the time and thinking, "How can I turn this into a meme?" Right? There wasn't new Star Trek to do that with. So it was going back to historical material to create memes for a while. So I think that's part of it. I think part of it also, I can't think of a way to say this without running the risk of offending somebody, but I think Star Trek fans are a little bit more serious about Star Trek than a lot of other fans are about whatever it is that they like. There's an enormous pool of Star Wars memes. And I think that's because, Star Wars lends itself a little bit more easily to being treated lightly. I think a lot of the time Star Trek, it takes its science seriously. It takes its characters seriously. It doesn't necessarily deal in as many archetypes as Star Wars does. I think Star Wars, kind of tends to lean on archetypes that folks are already familiar with. And I think Star Trek does that a little bit less. So I think that people who watch Star Trek like maybe have a sort of respect for the subject matter that does not lend to them being as light with it.
I see.
Yeah. And, which hardly, I by no means do I mean to say that that's universal, but I think your average Star Trek fans take Star Trek more seriously than your average Star Wars fan takes Star Wars.
Smash, what do you think?
I can see that. I can see that maybe some Star Trek fans are a little less shitposty, especially about the franchise that they've loved for, 10, 20 years.
Which is
really
not to
hard.
say that you would know that if you looked at the Star Trek meme subreddit. It is wall-to-wall shitposts.
It's true. I totally agree with you. I think it's just in general, we take it a little bit more seriously, and we just have to be the change we want to see. We just want more memes. Just got to start creating our own content.
I want to throw a stat out. I'm sorry,
please,
go ahead.
By all means. Well, I was just going to say, that said, now that we have got Discovery back on the air, now that there is talk about, oh my God, there's talk about a Quentin Tarantino Star Trek movie, which shut up and take my money. I absolutely want to see what Quentin Tarantino would do with the Star Trek universe. But now that there's more content coming out, I do think we're going to see an uptick in the number of memes that are being made. And even when season 1 of Discovery was on the air, there were folks who were taking stuff from that and turning it into memes. So I think it's going to bounce back.
I want to give you a stat to both of you. Now, currently, Star Trek Memes has 7,895 subscribers. Prequel Memes has 798,587. Now, however, this isn't about the lower number of subscribers in Star Trek Memes, but I give you Prequel Memes, 798,587. If I were to ask you to take all of these Star Trek related subreddits, all of the Star Trek communities there, put them all together, all the subscribers, how many do you think that is?
Oh, now that is an interesting question.
Just give me a ballpark. Either one of you, just shoot me a number. What do you think?
Oh,
I know the answer, by the way.
Including
go ahead, Smash.
the main sub?
Yes, all of them.
Couldn't be over 1 million.
Yeah, I think I would ballpark somewhere between 500 and 700,000 would be my guess.
Right, okay. Me too.
All right, so Flelk and Smash, you guys are both guessing all the Star Trek communities in existence, subscribers together, about 500,000. Okay, unless there is an inordinate amount of Star Trek subreddits that I do not know about, and I believe I know about at least the active ones, as I put together that list on r/United Federation. I took all of those, including ones that are not members. There are a few Star Trek communities out there that are not members of United Federation of Reddit, but I took all of them, added them all together, approximately 200,000.
Oh, wow.
Approximately 200,000. 100,000 or so of that is from our Star Trek. And then the rest is mostly divvied up. You've got Star Trek Gifts has about 44,000 of that. But that number in regards to subscribers amongst all the other subreddits starts to dip pretty quickly. So you're looking at, and I'm not counting all Star Wars subreddits, not all communities, just prequel memes, completely dwarfs the entire Star Trek community.
Well, I think that it's easier to make fun of the prequels than it is to make fun of most of Star Trek. It's like, I would expect to see way more Mystery Science Theater 3000, takes on something, well, frankly terrible, like the prequels, than I would on like Ken Burns documentaries, right? Like there's so much stupid stuff in the prequels to make fun of. And I know for a while Reddit was just devoted to finding every conceivable memeing opportunity in the prequels. So I guess I'm not astounded. by that.
And it sounds like from your theory is the Star Trek community takes it more seriously. So that's why we're not going to see a concerted effort like that was given towards the Star Wars side.
I don't necessarily want to lean into that too hard. I definitely think that it is a factor at play. I don't think it's like the primary factor at play, but I think there are a lot of people who engage with Star Wars stuff more lightly. I think Star Wars is just kind of a more lighthearted sort of thing in general, right? It doesn't take itself that seriously. It doesn't matter how the engines work. It doesn't matter what the relationship between hyperspace and real space is, right? Nobody is ever going to write a book called The Physics of Star Wars. But there's a book called The Physics of Star Trek on my shelf right now, and it's got an article in it by Stephen Hawking, right? People take the reality, the world of Star Trek a lot more seriously than I think they do the world of Star Wars.
And they do. And please don't let them break something in canon.
Oh, dear God, no. Because one of my favorite lines of conversation that happens in Daystrom Institute all the time is like, hey, here's this discontinuity in the show. How do we come up with an in-universe explanation for this? And people will tie themselves in logical knots trying to figure it out.
There's absolutely no way Spock can have a beard going into this season of Discovery because he never mentioned having grown a beard during the original series or any of the movies.
Exactly.
People, are you kidding us? Really? I have had beards on and off, hair, no hair, whatever, but it is not a continuity error to see a picture of me in college with facial hair. It's like, well, no, you weren't supposed to because you didn't mention that. In that you're right. That is, the picture of Picard from Nemesis when he was looking at his Academy photo, and I guess they figure, well, it would be cute to use a photo of the actor who was playing the antagonist Shinzon. Bald, Tom Hardy, he had no hair for the role, made him kind of look like a young Patrick Stewart. And so they figure, well, okay, let's do this. Let's have a picture of Tom Hardy because he's playing a clone of Picard as the photo of Picard from Starfleet, from the Academy. And I thought, okay, yeah, that was cute, nice little tie-in to bring home the fact that this man is a clone. And this was in the early days of the internet. Let's see, this movie Nemesis was 2004, I believe, and so not really early days of the internet, but we didn't have quite the social media that we have now. But I do recall even then there was just this uproar, this uproar about that photo, because in that photo Picard was depicted as having no hair, but we know damn well that he had hair later in a Star Trek, in a Starfleet career, because when he was captain of the Stargazer and he went to see Beverly because Jack Crusher had died, there was that scene in Next Generation, that flashback, and Picard had hair. But Picard had the hair. So no, we're not accepting this picture of him from the Academy when he didn't have hair, because that breaks canon. And I'm dying. I wanted to, because again, just because he doesn't have hair now doesn't mean that people change their looks. This is a show. This is not breaking. It's the genesis of Picard's hair must go in one direction, from hair to none. We cannot bounce back. And there are discussions. There are full discussions that happen on the internet about this. And don't even get me started about the look of the Klingons. And you're right. I think you are right. And well, that would be a whole other podcast episode. I swear.
I got to tell you, of all the stuff that I dislike about Discovery, the redesigned Klingons is like bottom of the list. Like, I'm fine with that. We're better with prosthetics now. One of the things that has always troubled me about Star Trek is that the aliens do not look nearly alien enough. And, there's the late TNG episode, The Chase, where they established that, like, oh, somebody seeded the galaxy with humanoid DNA. And that's why we all just have different weird bumps on our heads. But, that's covering up for the realities of trying to do the prosthetic. So the redesigned Klingons do not bother me nearly as much as they bother other people. That said, the photo of Picard in Starfleet Academy with no hair, that made me furious. That was just a lack of attention to the universe that they'd established already. We know he had hair when he was commanding the Stargazer. So, like, unless young Picard decided for the purposes of that one photo that it would be neat to get his head shaved and then decided to grow it back in before it all fell out, that one makes no sense. That one got under my skin. I apologize. I couldn't let that pass unremarked. I'm that kind of nerd.
Oh, man.
Smash, hair or no hair? Picard.
No hair.
No hair.
That's my final answer. No hair.
And I think that just brings it back around to the fact that the meme economy for Star Trek is lower, is lessened, because we take it too seriously. It lends itself to more serious type discussions, as you're right. I think both of you have said it in a way that I hadn't really looked at before, is that we lend ourselves to having these encyclopedias, these tech manuals, these explanations. And I think as fans, I believe there's a tendency to not enjoy Star Trek enough to want to have fun with it. We don't really shitpost with it that much. There are memes out there, nice videos, nice GIFs, nice discussions, et cetera, but I really believe that as a whole, as a community, that Star Trek is taken a lot more seriously.
I think people are certainly more willing to take it very seriously. But at least for me, and everybody's relationship with Star Trek is a little bit different, but at least for me, I'm capable of looking at it both ways. I'm capable of taking it deadly seriously. I'm capable of having conversations about, like, yeah, precisely how do the holodecks work anyway? We see this, we see that, this doesn't jibe with that. How can we account for it, right? And I'm also capable of, doing very, very lighthearted humor with it that, just plays around with the subject matter and stuff. So I think it's kind of both. I honestly do, and I think it's, it depends on which mindset you want to adopt. And I would push back against the notion that people who take Star Trek seriously take it too seriously.
Right.
I think that it really does lend itself to, those sorts of questions about internal consistency. And you look at a lot of stuff that grew out of Star Trek. You look at actual constructed languages being used in other things, and whether that's Dothraki in Game of Thrones, or all the various other languages that the producers have gone to a linguist and they've said, come up with a language for us to use. We can't just have people mumbling nonsense, right? That's because of Star Trek. It's because of Star Trek. All this attention to continuity that we're seeing now, all of these little details in the Marvel movies that then come back in later movies, that really is the legacy of fans of Star Trek who took it very seriously and wanted to see that sort of, internal consistency. So I don't think it's just Star Trek fans that do that stuff, but I think it's sort of Star Trek fans that elevated it to a high art. It's an emotional thing for a lot of people. You get attached to these characters, you get attached to this universe. Star Trek is at its core supposed to be portraying this egalitarian utopia. There are, the fundamental idea was to try and show the world being the best place it can be in the future. And, what sort of adventures do you throw when nobody has to worry about hunger, when nobody has to worry about sexism or racism or any kind of prejudice? And what sort of challenges do you face? Prejudice against Data as an android, Measure of a Man, one of the greatest TNG episodes of all time. Shows these characters encountering a prejudice that they didn't even think about being possible. And so I think that people attach to Star Trek for that reason. It is very utopian. These are very interesting characters facing problems that you don't face unless you are in this kind of world where scarcity of resources is no longer an issue. And so I think when you make fun of that, you kind of challenge people's notions of this. I hesitate to say perfect world, but this better world, this world where they face new and different challenges from what we face today. And so I think there are some people who kind of push back against that, who have trouble laughing at it because it is something that's near and dear to them. But at the same time,
right.
I think there are a lot of people who are capable of having both mindsets.
Well, and Star Trek Memes has been a community for 7 years. Just looking at that, started in October of 2011. And to me, that seems to be at a time, and I believe you mentioned this early on, there was really a gap in regards to content, or to Star Trek content, especially at that time. About the only thing that was happening was you had the new movies, the new Trek movies, which either love them or hate them. It was new content.
Let's be honest. People who are fans of Star Trek at the time the reboot movies came out, looked at them and went, that is barely Star Trek.
That's
yeah.
I'm going to get up on a soapbox for a second here, and I'm going to say those movies are what turned Star Trek into an action franchise, and that was bad for Star Trek.
I agree with you. I like them. I thought they were great. Well, okay, I like them. I thought they were very good. I believe that I might be in the minority when I say that the direction they went in was a direction that they had to go in, and that is in regards to the action, because today's audience is just different. I'm not saying that I like that. I just am saying that I can see why the thought was to go that route, and it's because Star Trek limped out of the late 90s, early 2000s, and got hit with show cancellation, a lackluster show cancellation with Enterprise, a lackluster movie with Nemesis, and it was gone. The franchise is pretty much lay dormant. And to get a new audience, unfortunately, they had to go that route of the action.
Well, I think, pardon me, I think they were headed in that direction already, because, I think it's generally agreed, and certainly there are going to be some people who disagree with this, but I think it's generally agreed that First Contact was probably the best of the next gen movies.
Yes.
And First Contact was really actiony by Star Trek standards for the time. We've got Picard running around in his undershirt with a phaser rifle. I mean, it's pretty hardcore. And then, they came along with the film, which must not be named. It's fine. I'll say it. Insurrection. They came along with Insurrection.
You did not like that 2-part episode?
Oh God, it was barely even a 2-part episode. It's fine. I'm glad Riker and Troy finally got hitched. That was nice.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And of course the jokes about Riker shaving the beard were entertaining as well. But no, for the most part, I think Insurrection was a pretty bad Star Trek movie. But again, elements of combat. And then once they got to Nemesis, I mean, it was all action all the time. It's the only time we've ever seen the Enterprise actually ram another ship. Like it actually happens in the movie. So I think that there were steps being taken in that direction, even before I don't know if you want to call it the pre-Renaissance franchise, the pre-reboot franchise, sort of died off. So I don't necessarily think that the makers of Star Trek went in that direction because they really had to. I think they went in that direction because they saw that First Contact was really good and also that it had a lot of action in it and went, oh, that's what audiences want. And completely set aside the fact that, they pull in the creator of Warp Drive. They bring back the greatest Star Trek villain of all time, the Borg. They give, Picard really complex post-traumatic stress disorder stuff that he has to deal with in the middle of this. It brings up deep feelings for him that we have not seen him engage with in that way before. We've got Data with an emotion chip having to deal with like real fear for the first time. Except for that cop-out scene where he just turns it off, but we're not going to talk about that. So there's all of this great depth and complexity for the characters and the core concepts of the show that are in First Contact. And, the production team looks at it and they go, oh, they shot at a lot of stuff. That's what fans want to see. They want to see him shooting at stuff. I think that the push to pull in action in Star Trek is a push to broaden the audience. And I mean, me personally, I think that's a business mistake because you have a bunch of people who are deeply invested in this brand, who are going to keep coming back to this brand, as long as it, touches on these core things. And the people who are interested in watching an action movie, they're out just as soon as it stops being an action movie. It's one of the things that drives me up the wall about Discovery. You can really tell Paramount is trying to make Star Trek The Expanse. And it just doesn't work. I like Star Trek. I like The Expanse, but mashing them together is it's like trying to do PBS NewsHour Beyond Thunderdome. Like it's just so incongruous. It doesn't work.
Well, and then it makes it hard to lend itself towards meme content. And so I think that's going to be one of the things that we hope for, because around 7,000 subscribers, those are rookie numbers. We got to get those numbers up.
Well, I certainly agree with that.
Is that how that works?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Rookie
numbers. Those numbers.
Indeed. No, well, I would love to see more people come and make memes. I would love to see more people come and, laugh at the dumb memes that we have right now. More shit posts, yes. To be sure.
Yes. And we would like to see more memes, more of those posts, and please, for our listeners and the Reddit audience, come visit r/StarTrekMemes. They are a member of the United Federation of Reddit. Flelk, I just wanted to say thank you very much for being our guest here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a real pleasure. I love the United Federation concept. I think it is a great hub for people to find whatever hyper-specific niche of Star Trek stuff they are interested in. And whether that is gifting opportunities from the show, whether that is making memes out of Star Trek or memes about Star Trek. I love seeing people express their engagement with this franchise. I want to see it go on forever, and I want to see people talking about it until we finally actually get to the 24th century and we're all trading holographic memes.
I want to be one of the first ones to have holographic meme. I think my kids will. My kids will have holographic meme. Dad, do you not understand this meme? It's very sway. Come on, Dad. I'm going to drop a little reference in there for anyone who's been watching this season of The Flash. So if it's very fellow kids of me, I apologize. I'm an old timer.
That's fine. If you're a fan, it's legitimate. That's all that matters.
That is great. Well, we hope that you subscribe to our Reddit community and enjoy this podcast so you can see just how rich and unique content created by the greater Star Trek community can be. As Q would say, see you out there.